Learning Perek Daled, Halacha Daled, Hilchos Tshuva, and there are five, another five, or Oison, if you, the one who does them, Ein Cheskosei Lo Shuban. Mayan, he will not, he is tied up in a situation where he will not be able to repent, because Lefishem Dvorim Kalam Be'enei Roiv Odom, because people look at it as a very minor sin, and therefore he thinks that he didn't sin. Now we'll go to the Peirush. Those sins which are between that man sins, which he thinks he didn't sin. So Dalad Me'ahen, what are they? Chamisha Dvorim, Hoiso Ison, Enches Kosei Lo Shuvah. Those who do it, the natural trend is that they will not repent. The Vishem Dvorim Kalim Be'enei Roiv Odom, because they are found to be very non-transgressing in their own eyes. And him tzechoite, thus he finds he sins. Who yidnoim yidman, he thinks she'ein zeh chet. It's not a chet. Elohim. These are them. Oil masuda she'ein masbekes labalo. Somebody eats from a meal which is not enough even for its owner. Shezeh avagezelu. It's a type of stealing. He says he thinks I didn't do anything wrong. Did I eat without his permission? He gave me permission. The Meiri, when he talks about tshuva, he mentions somebody who eats a meal that's not sufficient for its owner, is he steals silently, and he doesn't think that he steals. Since he got permission to eat, he thinks I didn't do anything wrong, and he causes people to spend money for him with their consent, because the poor man at times is embarrassed to say, I don't have anything. And from his words we learn, this is the intent of the Rambam here. It's avak gezel, because it could be that he only gave him permission because he was embarrassed, but really he didn't want to give it to him. The Tshuvas Hashona cites Chulin 7a, Sharapels ben Yoyer, when in the beginning agreed to eat by Rebbe, even though he never ate by anyone else. And it says the reason there is because Yisrael like Doshim, and you can benefit from them. There are those who want to give, but they don't have. There are those who have and don't want to give. Rashi explains that there are people who want to benefit others, but they don't have the ability, the wherewithal to do it. And apparently didn't want to eat from them, so you shouldn't cause them too much difficulty. It would seem from Rashi that the main concept of the Isser, the forbiddenness, is because he causes that person to find himself in financial difficulty. But from Loshen Rambam, Avak Gezel would seem like the Meiri, that even though he has, but he doesn't want to give it to him because he doesn't, and he only says yes because he doesn't want to be looked at as someone who's unwilling to give. Second one isAmishtamish Ba'avutoy. He uses the mashkon, the secured item which he took from an shel oni, from an oni, while he's holding it. That this avot, this secured item, is belongs to the poor man, but it's only and we're not talking about where it's gone. It's like a shovel or a machresha, a plowshare, and he says, what do I? There's no difference between when I used it or afterwards. I didn't take it from him. He's going to get it back. Sayyid Abba Yisrael asks a question. Why does he mention these instances that it says Peirush in the Torah, even if it's a rich man's secured item, you're not allowed to take it and use it. And we find in the Shulchan Aruch, Chodesh Mishpot, that it's forbidden. Therefore, he explains that he takes from a poor man this shovel or plowshare, and usually you would pay for the usage. Therefore, somebody uses it, thinks, what I make him lose, since he doesn't using it doesn't cause the it to become unfit. But his avak ribis, because he's using something which he has no right to use, and that is a benefit which is one is not supposed to have from something when he lent money and he took in its place to secure the loan a shovel, and he doesn't think it's a sin, therefore he won't do tshuva. We'll turn the page. The Miri explains that kardom mafrisha, this shovel and the plowshare, is actually the item does get used. You see, after a while, they break. Why do they break? But that you can't measure the amount of wear and tear that takes place on it. Therefore, he can't do tshuva because he thinks he didn't do anything. Gimel, somebody who looks at forbidden women and or at women in forbidden places of their body, that he thinks that Ma'al Daito, he's of the opinion, Shein V'Gaklum, what am I doing? It doesn't affect me. Shoimer Chibalti, he says, did I live with her? Kiravti Eslo, did I get close to her? When he doesn't know that the sight that he sees of Godel is a great sin. She Remes Legufon Shel Aroyos. This is what causes him ultimately to sin with Aroyos. As it says, it says, do not sin after your eyes and after your heart. And this means you're not allowed to see it. Hilchos Tshuva, he writes, even somebody who just stares at a small finger of a woman, but he gets benefit from it, he enjoys it. It's just as equivalent as looking at hidden parts of her body, and even to listen to the voice or to see or hear is forbidden. And he explains all of these things are forbidden, and they're negative commandments. And you only are permitted to look at the face of a unmarried woman in order to decide whether you want to marry her. It doesn't matter whether she's a psula, a virgin, or she already had relationships, to see if she is someone that he would like to marry. There's no issa, and one in fact has to do so before he marries. Chazal tell us in Kedushin that person should marry a woman till he marries her, but he shouldn't do it in a way of promiscuity. As it says, Bris karisi l'enoi. I forged a covenant for my eyes. Therefore, why should I look at a virgin? And there he brings down a person is forbidden to look at women at a time when they are washing clothing, because usually then their arms are visible, and they're on the near the river. They can't be modest about what they're doing. And furthermore, even a garment that a woman wears that he knows the woman who's wearing it, he should not look at the beauty of it. She shouldn't come to thoughts of aroyas, immorality. And Sefer Mitzvahs he puts down. This is what we are warned. We shouldn't go after our hearts. And he brings in the posuk it says, which we say every day in Parashat Tzitzis. And he says, Achenechem is actually adultery, znus, or immorality, illicit relationship. It says, Shimshon was taken in by his eyes. That's why what happened to him took place. He adds here, it's a great sin. He causes his body to seek out aroyas. The source of these words are in the Yerushalmi. The eyes and the heart are two agents for sin, because the eye sees and the heart desires, and the actual deed then causes it happens. So as we see that everything begins with the eyes. In fact, it's the closest item to our brains. as the Gemara says, he who studies women, doesn't matter who it is, he'll ultimately sin. And it doesn't mention specifically Aroyas. And here he writes, only if he looks at women that are forbidden to him. In a Brisa, which is brought down the Riv, which is the source of the Rambam, it says over there, if he stares at forbidden Aroyas. Rabbeinu Yoina, it's also found by Rabbeinu Yoina. Rabbeinu Yoina adds, the person shouldn't look at any married woman, because it says Chazal say that the heart and the eyes are the two agents of sin, and even an unmarried woman again is a source which one only should do when he has to do so, and not the Pnuya. The Chachamim told him to stay away from that, because otherwise he'll come to Chas v'Shalom do sins. The Sefer Tshuvas Hashana, he cites that many things that it's only forbidden if he actually comes to do ultimately a act which is forbidden. Therefore, he states, the Rambam specifically states, that he thinks he didn't do anything. He's making a mistake in this. I didn't do anything. I'm not going to do anything. And this here comes from what a person finds, that actually when one is married, there are times when his wife is forbidden to him because she's a nidah, and even though she's forbidden to him, but he's allowed to enjoy her presence. So the question is, why is that different? The answer is, his wife is permitted to him because he knows that in the future he'll be able to have a relationship with her, whereas other women, he's never permitted to do so. The Ramchal says that the issur of staring or thinking about aroyas it stands on its own, except for the fact that it brings a person to do a sin. And he explains the posuk, do not go after your eyes, your hearts and your eyes, is talking about the actual forbiddenness to look. And it's considered like coming close to aroyas, just like you wouldn't hand something to a woman or to have contact with a woman. So too, the Ramchal feels that even though sight does not have touch, it's the same thing. Therefore, the Rambam brings this issur from loisasuru, because you could think that if he only benefits, there's no issur. The Rambam says it's a great sin. Achrei Einechem is znus. We'll stop here. We'll continue in Mitzvah. Let's see. Learning Perik Dalet, Halacha Dalet, and we're up to the fourth section. Hamschar bekaloin chaveroi, oimer b'liboy she'ena choyte, she'ena chet. A person who glorifies himself at the expense of somebody else's embarrassment, and he says in his heart that I haven't sinned. Because his friend is not there. So how is he embarrassed? He doesn't know about it. And even though we learned in Perek Gimel, Halacha Dalet, that this is among those that don't have a Chedi Ulam Habo, and that's in Yerushalmi, here the Ram adds, V'loi Beishoy. It's a situation where the person was not embarrassed. Before we were talking where he wasn't embarrassed. Ela Orach Ma'asav HaTovim he just tells others about how the difference between his actions as opposed to the actions of his friend, or his wisdom against the wisdom of his friends, in order that so they should be able to tell from what he's stating that he is an honorable man and his friend is not. And these are the things that a person does. It's included among the items which a person never repents from, because he thinks, what did I do? I didn't say I do any avera. I didn't embarrass him. All I did was cite the difference between his approach and mine. Because the Mishnah cites Megillah from Nachunim and Akona Oima. They asked him, how did you lived for so long. Shiur he never utilized the opportunity of his friend's embarrassment to garner more honor. There's a certain situation which means how a person honors himself with his friend's embarrassment. It's brought on the Gemara, such as Rav Huna carried on his shoulders a beam. Rav Chona wanted to help him, and to help him take it from him, and he didn't. And Rav Huna said, I have never utilized my friends in order that I should not embarrass myself. In other words, by utilizing my friend, then people won't say, oh, look who's carrying a beam. And that's Rabbi Nachman ben Akona also said that he never used his friends in such a way that they would have to embarrass themselves a bit so that he would be less embarrassed. The Meiri explains that somebody who honors himself with his friend's embarrassment has two parts to it. One is the very speaking against his friend who was mentioning the embarrassment of his friend. The second one is the action that he saves himself from embarrassment by saying this other one does things much worse. Therefore, the action that he should have been embarrassed, he gives over to someone else to be embarrassed with. It's called glorifying yourself with the embarrassment of others. And as proof, he says to Meiri, the Talmidim asked from the Chunim and Akona, and they received his tshuva. But the Rambam disagrees, and he's of the opinion that it's only when someone actually utilizes a comparison between him and someone else to be considered a one who is honoring himself with his friend's embarrassment. But if you let somebody else help him, that's not similar to it. The Achronim extract from this that only if he embarrasses this other person in front of others, that's the factor as opposed to withholding embarrassment from someone else. The Mekevas HaMishnah on the Yerushalmi, that somebody who honors himself with the embarrassment of his friend has no portion in the world to come, explains that that's only when he compares the two, himself and his friend. But what we mentioned earlier, that he doesn't permit others to help him, or he does permit others to help him, and thereby they have some embarrassment, that's not included in those who have no portion in the world to come. We come to the fifth person, somebody who assumes bad things about people who are good. He says in his heart, it's not a sin. Because he would say, what did I do to him? Do I have anything other than a doubt? Maybe he did it or he didn't do it. He doesn't know that this itself is a sin, because he places a person who's a honorable person, Adam Kosher, in his mind as somebody who's not an honorable person. This is found in Shabbos 97a. Somebody who assumes that somebody who's an honorable person is punished physically, meaning he gets physical afflictions. The brachas we find. If you see a Talmid Chacham who did an Avera at night, do not think about him during the day, that he's not an honorable person. Maybe he did Tshuva. The Gemara concludes, certainly he did Tshuva. The Peirush HaMeir is on the Mishnah that says that he suspected a Kohen Gadol who went into the Avodah before Yom Kippur. They would make him swear that he would not do it incorrectly, like the Tzaddikim wanted to explain it. He would turn to a side and cry that they suspected him, and they would turn aside and cry because right before Yom Kippur they're suspecting somebody of possibly intending to do something wrong. And the Zkenim were crying because they had to do this in order to make sure that the Kohen Gadol did his avodah, the service on Yom Kippur properly. The Rambam explains because it's also, according to the Torah, to suspect someone, and therefore, even though it's for the purpose of making sure that the service is done correctly, still it's something that a person shouldn't get used to doing. That's why they cried to alleviate the fact that they have to do it. The Avodas HaMelech questions from a brisa. It says a person should always be in your eyes like a robber. And however, when it comes to honoring them, you should honor them as if they are the greatest of the generation, like Rae Gann Family. So the question is, how can you suspect them? And he explains that therefore the Rambam specifically used the language on past tense, on something he did or didn't do, because to suspect someone, for example, not to leave your wallet in a room because maybe somebody will take it. That's not called kosher big shayla. But to protect yourself from loss, you have a right to put things away. Unless we see that lo'elam yehei kol odam be'einav kelistim, when it says a person should always be in your eyes like a robber, you have a right to be careful and suspect that the other person might be overcome by temptation. But that's only in the future. But something that already was done, there you have to assume that he did things correctly. Chaim Kanievsky Shlita asks that the Rambam says that Isu is that he places an honorable person, a kosher man, who in his thoughts as someone who is an evil person. We find when he thinks about the future, he might be a robber, he's also placing him in that category. Therefore, he tries to differentiate that the Brisa is talking about he doesn't recognize him. Therefore, he doesn't know what he is. However, the Ram is talking where it's his friend or somebody who is acquaintance. He knows who he is, and such a person you're not allowed to. But the Rambam itself in Birsham Mishnayos Yumo states it is forbidden by the Torah to suspect, to think a bad thought about any person only when it's totally necessary. So it would seem even anyone, not just uh, someone he knows, just like we find by the Ziknei Sanhedrin, the elders of the Sanhedrin, that they had an obligation to do so only, and therefore they did so. But otherwise, it's forbidden by all persons, even if you don't know if he is an honorable person. We have concluded Halacha. We will go on to the next Amud. In the Sefer Haredim, we find Chazal said every person should be in your eyes like a robber, a thief, and exactly what the Brisa says, and you should honor him as if he was the greatest man in the world. The question is, a person has to always judge his fellow man that he's meritorious, and here it seems that he should suspect him, and it seems you're not allowed to suspect. And he answers that that's true, that he has to be a tzaddik gomer in his eyes, and honor him with a full heart, and not something that he does out of flattery, which is only outwardly so, but he doesn't really believe in what he's saying. But he can suspect him to be careful that he should not be damaged by the other person, unless he knows for sure that the person is an honorable person. So we find by Rabbi Abba Chilkiah that he suspected the Chachmei Yisrael that came to him, that they were not known to him, so therefore he wouldn't, before he ate from them or did anything, he suspected them. Thus, there are three reasons, what it says in the Brisa, that everybody should be in your eyes like a robber. One, that the isser of choshev b'ksher and the isser of suspecting someone is only on the past deeds, but for the future one may do so. Two, there's a difference between somebody who in his own eyes is considered kosher to someone who in his own eyes is suspect because he doesn't know him. In other words, somebody who he knows, he has to assume he's kosher. And the third one is only when he has decided that this fellow is not an honorable person. However, if he's careful from him because to protect himself, there's no forbiddenness because he hasn't placed him in the category of a person who is suspect, and he honors him in actual fact.